Hi, this is Jemin. I'm back to have a talk on freedom of speech in India. I'm going to talk about the status of freedom of speech in India, and I'm not going to be too historical on this concept. I'm not going to discuss more also from the legal point of view. My basic emphasis is going to be a talk on free speech in India. What do we understand by it, and what are the basic hurdles, and what we can do to improve our status. I think in the span of last 5 6 years, India's rank on free speech index has drastically fallen, considerably fallen. So we used to rank 134, 134th out of 190 countries in 2014, and today we have crossed the mark. I think we are around 141 or 142nd, so 142 or so. So I have few school students who are very brilliant, and I also did a podcast with them on data privacy and security, which you can scroll down and listen to it on my channel. That is Gemin Triggerer, which you are right now switched to, and they'll be raising me questions once I finish giving a talk on free speech in India. So basically, this is a very extempore talk, and I'm very glad that you are listening to me, and I'm also obliged to all the students who would be raising queries, just like a journalist, and I think that's very important. Well, I'm not the any expert in free speech in India, but I think it's one of my area of interest, and I think that's very important. So free speech is equally important. It is like salt. It is like a salt to the food, and without salt, the food is tasteless. So free speech is very necessary for the holistic growth of human mindset of human society. And I think before free speech comes the free thinking. So, there's a correlation out here, and also free action. As long as they are all responsible, it makes sense. So, I think free speech can be, tracked to the source of free thinking. So, free thinking is thinking very boldly, openly, fearlessly. Having the right to think, having the right to imagine. These are all natural rights. It's not that these rights only come from the social contract between the government and the people or by any constitution as such. I think free speech and free thinking are very natural, they are very innate, and they are very intrinsic to any human body. So, as long as we are able to think very freely, we grow, we innovate, we produce, we create. And the status of countries like North Korea, China, Venezuela, okay, where the quality of free speech is deteriorating. Even in the Middle East countries, there's no healthy status of free speech. So I think the individual understanding of reality as well as social consciousness are all the factors that shapes the way we think, and that ultimately eventually leads to alteration of free speech and expression. And without free speech and expression, we would not be in the position to improve our status, our society. We won't be able to democratically raise issues as such. However, the recent trends which are seen in the Indian polity is not so good enough, where people are lynched over expression, where people are bullied on social media, where people receive rape threat, death threat, where people are attacked by a group of trollers. So anyway, free speech from their point of view is also justified. Well, they have the right to make their case. But however, this is also spiraling the quality of free speech, and most of us who do not agree with the reality or with any policies or even with the leadership of the governance, they are brutally spiral down, and that affects the quality of free speech in general. Also, India continues to carry forward the archaic colonial laws even today, despite of so-called independence from the colonial rule. We are still carrying forward the same press laws that were introduced by the Britishers to control the newspapers and magazines and other freedom fighters from raising their voice in favor of freedom and independence. So somewhere I think we just have changed the face of the rule, but not the the conscience of the rule, which continues today to attack us in different form. So anyway, free speech starts with the standards set in home. So it makes a lot of sense to have a very liberal outlook on the introduction and development of free speech, and then it goes to religious communities, society, social communities, schools, and nevertheless media. So that is it. And we have sedition laws which are highly misused in the span of last 5 to 6 years. If you check up data, if you just go through the research of how free speech is being systematically misused and expropriated. So that is one thing which we need to seriously introspect on, or else we will be doomed, or else we would be another North Korea with a democratic constitution. But anyway, that doesn't make sense. I think we need to welcome free speech even if it goes against our views. We need to welcome free speech even if we do not agree to the speech given to us or whatever we access. Often people confuse free speech with hate speech, but I think there's a thin line between both. So it also depends on how do we define hate, and in the name of hate speech, laws are out there to misuse our natural right, which is guaranteed by the Constitution. If you take the case of US and India, US introduced First Amendment, and that protects the sanctity of citizens and free speech at the same time from the state intervention. We also have a constitutional provision under Article 19, but then the very first amendment, pushed by the former and late Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, has been totally opposite to what US has done, and it also goes against the principles of free speech. So there are plenty of reasonable restrictions, and in the name of reasonable restrictions, some authentic and very splendid free speech cases have been brutally misused. So with this, I end my understanding of what free speech is. I would request you all to also do a libertarian analysis of free speech. It's totally different from the liberalism philosophy. So we need to protect our thought processes and our speech from the state intervention, that is from the government intervention, because I think government is not a natural concept. It is a superficial concept created by the people themselves. So I think somewhere the natural right, that is free speech, has to be protected, not just from the government intervention, but also from the vague and very archaic constitutional amendments. So I'm open to queries. I'll have my bunch of school students posing questions to me. So let's start with Sanchita.
Yes, thank you so much. My first question would be, recently the talks of nepotism are going on in Bollywood. What do you feel about the blind items that the journalists supposedly write to target certain actors, directors, or certain people in the industry?
Well, it depends on how you define those attacks. So call-out culture anyway goes very natural, and yellow journalism is what the entertainment industry is into. So it is very inorganic to expect sanity from the entertainment industry in this case. So there are laws pertaining to defamation where they can analyze how defamatory those reporting or those attacks have been, whether it attacks their privacy, their personal life. So it also depends on the receiver on how they want to perceive that particular free speech. So in some cases it's misuse, in some cases it's applicable, because anyway, we are very much egotistically conscious of our image and identity in public life. So in some cases, the journalists are also controlled in the name of laws, and somewhere I think they also cross the lines. The journalists also cross the lines when it comes to reporting. So as long as the fabric of your journalism goes ahead, so you can't expect any broader and mature understanding of journalism out there. So I think defamatory laws under civil and criminal would be charged. However, there have been judicial debates, on scrapping of criminal defamatory laws and in defending the cases of civil defamation. So anyway, I think we require a very organic and proactive approach towards this issue, and I think we need to raise a public consciousness on these concepts. So that is my understanding, Shweta. So let's have, say, Shubha, your doubt, your query, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you for recognition. Do you think there has been a vast change in the understanding of freedom of speech 10 years back and now? And can you please elaborate on that?
See, as far as my experience goes, 10 years back, I have written plenty of blogs on the issue of governance, and I never felt unsafe. And the reason I'm not on social media anymore, like Facebook and Twitter, that is because I feel, unsafe, and I have been a victim of online trolling. I have been a victim of death threat, and I also have a report on this. So I do not want to discuss more as of now because past is past. But however, I feel that it's just not me. There are other journalists. There are other people who have been lynched over, reportage, over writing of books. Even if you see the number of censorship when it comes to books or, even writing of reports, I think we are all directly or indirectly getting grilled in the name of free speech because I think it's not free yet. So the point is, how free is the freedom of speech in India? So somewhere I think, yeah, it has changed a lot. You also have a special IT groups. You have a special, trolling team that trolls your free speech, that tries to intimidate you so that you stop yourself from being more free. So that's my understanding, Shubha. Yeah, Udeti, your question, please.
Yes, sir. To start with, you mentioned that freedom of speech needs to be protected, but are we actually protected if we speak our mind? Because if a person speaks their mind against a powerful person, their well-being is put to a risk.
Mhm. So yeah, Uditi, I believe that that government is the best which governs the least. So this is a very interesting quote by Henry David Thoreau, who has been a civil disobedience activist and an anarchist who inspired even Mahatma Gandhi. So yeah, if why power interferes in the free speech, because there's too much of power in the hands of the government. So there is no accountability out there. So obviously the intervention is high, and that's why our quality of free speech is deteriorating. So there's a correlation between power and freedom. So when the government has more power, the people would have less freedom, and we Indians need to understand that. But however, we Indians love power. We imagine uh, our life only with power, and that power is nothing but an amalgamation of egoism, arrogance, and brutality, violence, etc. So it comes in many forms. So violence is not just I'm talking about physical violence here. So I think there's a social violence here. There's an emotional violence here. So if you try to think very freely, if you try to even express your own independent views at your own home or at your own place or among your friends, how you would be ostracized. So I think somewhere the collective consciousness is not so mature enough to understand the liberal standards of free speech. I think everybody has a point to make. So it's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to uh, hate someone or to dislike someone for differing from your views or even intimidating or threatening with any form of threat. So this is where we need to defend our free speech, and I think even before getting into legal vitality, I think it is somewhere the social action against free speech is high. So the relation between society and the laws is also to be blamed here. So that's my view. Okay, yeah, Anshi, your query,
Sir, do you
please.
think, yeah, sir. So, do you think that the restrictions on free speech mentioned in Clause 2 of the Indian Constitution should be reviewed and updated?
Yes, there is a dire need of judicial review, and I think the judiciary has to play a very proactive role. But then it also depends on the independency of judiciary. So somewhere, most of the judiciary is occupied by the upper caste, and also the appointment of judiciary. Pardon me for contempt of court here, but I think I'm making a very polemic remark. Has been also been selective. So I think there is a very important need to petition, the clauses, the sub clauses 2 of Article 19, which have reasonable restrictions. So I think somewhere we need to liberalize and free sedition. Somewhere we need to really, open up our understanding. And I think the continuation of sedition laws has done more damage than anything else in when it comes to free speech. So I think not every criticism against the government amounts to anti-national activity or sedition. I think the people's mindset here have been highly manipulated, and they need to think beyond what they are being told to think about. So that's my case. So yeah, Adir, what's your point?
Good afternoon, everybody. Sir, I have a very like it's not a straightforward question, but I have a question that where does freedom of speech not apply? Like, what are the exceptions of free speech?
See, free speech, I think by itself or by its innate nature is a very exceptional trait. So, if you are referring to the point of view of reasonable restrictions imposed by the state when it comes to friendly relations between the nations, when it comes to sedition, defamation, or when it comes to security and sovereignty. So somewhere I think the reasonable restrictions need to be revived. They are not so reasonable in 21st century. So the 20th century, cannot determine the fate of 21st century. So we have to change the characteristics of our understanding here. So I think free speech is almost practiced by all of us. Right now, I am practicing. So I do not know what are gonna be the social and legal consequences against my views after I upload this on YouTube. So some people would be hating me for that, but that's okay. I think everybody has right to dislike or hate anyone. But then issue begins when we are trying to exceptionally misuse free speech. So it's okay to disagree. We can decently differ, and I think there's no reason for anyone to intimidate or hate anyone over political views. I think we are all entitled to our opinions and views. So somewhere some people believe that they have privilege over free speech than the rest. But what they fail to understand is that it's a kind of a cycle where tomorrow they will be grilled by the same laws that they are defending today. So this is where we need to think exceptionally strong. Yeah, Lakshay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
I would like, sir, I have few questions on regarding freedom of speech. I would like to know your thoughts. So my first question is, why are people given threats on their life or on their family when they try to raise their voice against social or political evil?
Mhm. So basically, people suffer from two psychological issues. The first is, Stockholm syndrome, in which they try to sympathize with the one who exploits them. So they are okay, some side, in political spectrum, we always have two sides, and the two sides always control free speech in their own ways. So it all depends on who is leading this side. So, you have a particular side who will defend the kind of governance that is happening, and the other side will try to oppose it. So when the sides change, the same people come out with the same amount of narratives. So this is it. So where they psychologically suffer from Stockholm syndrome here. And the second is cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance is a case where you are not ready to accept new facts. That's because it goes against your tradition of your protecting the older facts. So people don't want to easily change the beliefs even on new facts. That's why production of false news, production of fake news is high. That's because people suffer from cognitive dissonance because they don't want to accept new beliefs that goes against their older beliefs. So they immediately react, and they have this narcissistic understanding towards their leadership or towards the society or towards their own ideologies. So they want to not get distracted. They do not want to get dissuaded. So impulsively they issue death threat, rape threat, which is unfortunately not a very cultural, signature of good and civil society. So that is it, Lakshya. So do you have any other question, Lakshya, on this in continuation to the point one?
Yes, I have one more question.
Yeah.
So, why are so many people scared of asking or raising voice against big, huge influencers?
I didn't repeat. Can you repeat the question again? Why people are like against?
Yes, sir. Why are people so scared of raising voice against huge influencers?
Okay, so it's like, yeah, because there are consequences, it's like if you take the case of Saudi Arabia here, where if you try to speak, against the ideas of monarchy, or if you try to be more free out there, you will be chopped. So, when you are killing someone in public, or when you are intimidating someone legally in public sphere, then obviously the message goes across the spheres, and it's a kind of a message which the antagonist of free speech tries to use to send a message across all the sphere, trying to use it as a tool or a signal to hint that fear is the new normalcy and freedom is not. So people somewhere also hate freedom. They want freedom, but they cannot adjust and handle freedom, because freedom comes with responsibility. And I think they want freedom, but they don't want responsibility. So somewhere I think people suffer from eleuthorophobia, which is nothing but fear of freedom. So it's like the for thousands of years. I mean, even before Britishers, before Britishers, and even before Islamic invasion, we had somewhere we had manipulation of free speech, we had controlling of free speech. So we are continuing with that tradition. So it is, I think, more into our DNA to stay scary, to intimidate someone else, and never think beyond what we see or what we perceive, because we have been mentally controlled and channelized to hate freedom and just imagine to be free. So this is it. Yeah. So let's have, say, Tanishka.
So my
Yeah.
first is that recently there have been many instances that have stretched the envelope of what we define as freedom of expression. On the first hand, we have FIRs being filed against students for chatting Azadi. On the other, we have leaders giving hate speeches. Freedom of expression, enshrined under the Article 19, Part 1 of the Constitution, is not an absolute right. It comes with safeguards outlined under Article 19. So, sir, should these safeguards come under review?
Okay. So, yeah, Tanishka, I think it's a very broader perspective that you have raised, and a very intriguing at the same time. So, I almost like see a subjective utility of free speech and free speech laws, which are, used and misused according to the convenience, according to the political agenda. So the two case highlights are very relevant also to your question, but I cannot be specific on those cases, because anyway, it's people's choice, individual's choice, basically, on how do they qualify and how do they, utilize the standards of free speech. So I think it's an illusion to believe that we are free. I think we are free from the colonial rule, but we are not free from the standards set by the colonial rule. So the question is, independence from what? Independence to what? So there are plenty of other questions that would be going continuously here. So I think it all depends on individual's choice and preferences. So that's anyway a very great, well-researched question by you. I admire that, but I think it requires a very broader outlook, and we're also running short of time. So I'll just have a very last queries from those students who have raised their hands. So yeah, Uditi.
Yes, sir. What I wanted to ask was, what are the limitations and boundaries to freedom of speech?
See, the limitations should be first primarily set with the power of individuality. I think everybody should set boundaries for ourselves when it comes to practicing free speech. For example, if we are trying to defame anyone without any stronger facts, that violates the very natural right of free speech. So obviously, someone's sensitivity or image, identity would be affected. So as long as we do not personally set the boundaries, the government will use this case, incentive, or the chance to set provisions for us, and ultimately we would be bounded by more and more laws. So when we have more laws, we have less freedom. So we should have laws which are stronger but lesser, so that we can continue to widen the quality of free speech, and we become more expressive in what we think, in what we imagine, without fearing any amount of social or legal consequences. So that is it. Yeah, Adir?
So I have a really straightforward and direct question to you that does freedom of speech apply to social media too?
Yeah, obviously. I think when I talk about freedom of speech, I'm not referring to journalistic point of view. Even if you read Article 19 of Indian Constitution, I think that it does not mention about press out there. Okay, it talks about freedom of speech in general. So it's not that the only media has the monopoly on the definition or concept of free speech. I'm talking from the very individual level because for me, an individual, whether it's you, me, or anyone else, is above the sovereignty of collective, mindset or herd mentality. So I think I'm talking in the interest of all, even if those who disagree with me. But yeah, it should be more decent. It should be more polite. This amount of disagreement. So yeah, I talk about the online media also, that is social media, right? And too many cases on social media is also seen. Thankfully, last 3 years back, because of the judicial activism, we could smash 66A of IT Act, which was unnecessarily punishing people for making few Facebook posts and all. But however, I think the aftermath effect, the hangover still continues today, and somewhere I think we need to revive it up and just introspect on the same. Yeah. Yeah, Shubha. Your chance.
Yes, sir. So my question is, how can we as citizens of India improve our own understanding and implementing of free speech? How can we maintain a healthy free speech?
So let's address this question in a very straightforward manner. I think the biggest problem in India is not just maximum governance or maximum government. I think it's a cultural problem. I think it's in our culture to not respect privacy. It's in our culture to not respect consent, and that ultimately have consequences on the free speech. So you would have noticed that how we are not so, I'm sorry to generalize, but I think I'm speaking from the point of view of majoritarian. So pardon me for this apex fallacy media. So I think somewhere we have this fallacy of being going by the voices of the majoritarian, and we do not make a case to defend the individuality. So somewhere I think we need to revive the education system where we are taught about liberal thinkers, where we are taught about libertarianism philosophy. And I personally, have been doing talking in the lectures in case in the defensive case of free speech. It's my personal initiative, and I have also faced flack for this in my career and also in my social life. So somewhere I think the parenting has a role to play because the parents shape the culture of free speech at home, and then obviously the society and the community also have a role to play. And then comes the education system where it has to be revived up. But I don't think the government will revive the education because it serves the interest, and it be any kind of government. I'm not referring to any specific government. So I think somewhere we need to be very liberal at our own end. Then only we can make a good case. Otherwise, conservative understanding of free speech will not do any better good or any case as such. Yeah, Tanishka.
Yes, sir. Firstly, I would like to say something. Quoting from a recent book of Yuval Noah Harari, Justice Chandra said, "Questions you cannot answer are usually far better for you than answers you cannot question."
Okay, Tanishka, I did get your point. Anyway, I'm running short of time, so I'll just have, say, Sanchita, let your question be the last of this session.
Yes, sir. Actually, my question is of two parts. First of all, I would like to ask that according to the Indian Constitution, in case there is a violation of freedom of speech, people are not allowed to contempt the court. What is your views on that? Secondly, Indian rap songs are held in contempt by a lot of people because of their lyrics. As you said, there is a thin line between free speech and hate speech. Which part does this come under? I would like to know.
See, I'll address the very second question first. The thing is that if you don't like someone's speech, don't subscribe to it, don't feed it. The issue is when you want to get influenced by the kind of lyrics or kind of speech, whether it's made by any actor or even by a politician, So don't feed it if you don't like it. If you don't like it, just ignore it. Why do you have to even feel offended? Because that's anyway your personal choice to have subscribed to. And second thing, when it comes to say contempt of court, somewhere I think it's a legal it's a legal dilemma faced among the judiciary. I think not all are okay with the contempt of court, but somewhere I think it also acts as a barrier on free speech. But somewhere I think the judiciary has also made a strong case because the media circus that follows on any legal proceeding is equally also responsible. And you already know the quality of Indian news channels, especially the Hindi news and nowadays English. So you could see that how they go berserk, how they cross the line, how they cross insanity. So I think it should be more self-regulating rather than social regulating in order to practice in a very systematic and a beautiful manner, especially liberally, when it comes to the execution of free speech. So, okay, guys, I think we are running short of time. So I think I made a good case, and I'm very happy that all of you interviewed me on my thoughts of free speech, and your queries were really interesting. So please pardon me that I could see more hands up, but then I do not want to bore my audience as well because the attention span on audio is very lesser compared to the video. So I hope the audience are okay and they make a case out of this. Please share this video, okay, like it, and just viralize it so that we have a broader understanding. And I hope that it's taken in a very good spirit, in a very good taste as well. So I hope the good sense prevails hereafter. So this is Jaimin signing off from my show on free speech in India today. Please subscribe to Jaimin Triggerer. That's my channel. Thank you. Have a nice day. Stay home. Stay safe. Take care.